Hey everybody, welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor in soggy New Orleans, where we've got waves of thunderstorms rolling through, which is what we do here in June. Uh, Happy to be joined today, relieved to be joined by Greg Buckles, because we're trying to get some elucidation, explanation, and pontification on what, and as they said in Blazing Saddles, what in the wide world of sports is going on with Purview and eDiscovery in the Microsoft world. I keep seeing all these press releases, and we're changing the interface, and we're changing this and that. Um, I read your stuff, Greg, of course, um, and trying to keep up with that. But even that's making my ears bleed. So I thought, what better solution than to get you online? You graciously accepted to talk to me here. So what in the wide world of sports is going on with Microsoft and eDiscovery?
Well, thanks for having me on, Tom. For anybody who hadn't run into me before, Greg Buckles. I write under the eDiscovery Journal, so that's where you can find my stuff. And in years past, I'm essentially a recovering market analyst, forensic guy, um, consultant, and in the last 6 to 9 months, as Tom and I chatted about a little while ago, I'm actually back in handling cases again, which has
Yeah,
been fun, which
back to
gets
the
me
just when you
really in
thought you were
hype.
out, they pulled you
When you
back.
thought you were out, you're never out. Yeah, but it means that I've actually been using Purview with clients in their
Good.
systems on live cases, running into the same problems everybody else has, finding new features, and being surprised at just how fast Microsoft is changing, evolving, and developing. And that's not just Purview, but the Microsoft underlying architecture
Yeah.
and the because it's you can't just say I know Purview as the compliance interface for retrieval without spending a lot of time monitoring and watching for when Microsoft is moving your cheese between a hidden mailbox folder, and um, a new SharePoint folder somewhere over there, or in the case of some of the most recent Copilot content, finding out that some of it is still stored in the Azure service data sources.
Oh, okay.
Some of
And
it,
so,
some of it.
and just to interrupt, for those of you who don't know, I'm remiss in having introduced you. I assume that everybody who follows our space knows you, but Greg goes way back. He and I are contemporaries. We've been doing this, as you can tell from the color of our hair, about the same amount of time. Um, and But Greg has also carved out a really nice space in the last several years as the the Microsoft eDiscovery guru. And not only that, but the guy who keeps us informed on the eDiscovery Journal at least once a month with here's what's going on, here's their updates. You pointed out to me, I think when we talked with Rocky a few months ago, and I didn't even know this, that they'll post stuff on their website and then they take it down after a little while.
Well, it's logical. The Microsoft roadmap is their development roadmap, so they're putting up features, they're updating features. I did not realize that there was a an expiry in terms of when that stuff rolled off of there.
Yeah.
I have since had several other folks in the industry who, on their own private, because you can download it as in a variety of formats. So there
Right.
are other people beyond me who've kept a backlog of stuff going all the way back, and frankly, you don't really ever need to look at it for the most part. I had to use my little roadmap version today because I was trying to figure out whether or not Microsoft had ever announced that Purview eDiscovery was able to go back and to start pulling these automatically generated summaries that I had stumbled into um, as part of it, because I was running Purview tests and I looked down and I'm like, whoa, why is that document with my testing notes in this search coming up? And what is this auto-generated recap that I'm looking at? And you click on it in the review set in there, and all of a sudden I'm looking at literally a recap of my notes for the last month
Oh,
on testing Purview. And I'm like, well, I didn't ask it to do that. And, I knew that there was a summary feature that was rolled out last August because I had started to cover it and then realized that Doug Austin had already covered it and done really a nice job of that.
Yep.
And so I was like, well, I don't need to write about it. Doug's already written about it. Great. But what I didn't realize was that those automatic summaries were generated every time a user who has a premium license opens up Word and some of the other Office docs. I haven't tested the rest of them so far. And it shows up sometimes just right in the top bar. Like, you want to look at this. Well, what you don't realize is that's a stored file.
Wow.
And it's not stored in your mailbox that I can find. It's not stored in theirs. It seems to be by the path that is left, the breadcrumbs of the path that are left for us in the Purview reports, that it is still being stored in an M365 services data source, which tells me that it's still up in Azure.
Azure, yeah.
Now it's retrievable, so we can find it. Because it's addressable by Purview, that theoretically means the hooks are there to be able to maybe even try to figure out how to get it to force it to expire, how to get rid of it, things like this. That's good. That's not as scary as the reason I was looking there in the first place, which is the Microsoft Teams meeting recaps. I had an inquiry from a potential client asking, all of our users want to use Microsoft Meeting Copilot, and they want the recaps, but we want to manage it. We want to put controls around it. We want your best recommendations on how should we minimize the retention of this content, and if we have to pull it, can we make sure that we have the ability to identify it within our EDiscovery workflow, and it's not going to cost us a fortune later or come back and bite us. And before I'm going to sit down in front of a new client or prospective client, first thing I do is say, well, I haven't looked at this in 3 to 5 months, so I got to go up there and test it. I put back a meeting and said, you push back the meeting. Let me recheck and make sure I know what's going on, because Microsoft is literally changing things every month.
Yeah.
And not all of it's in that roadmap.
Yeah.
I wish it was, but not all of it is. And sometimes Microsoft is so large that what happens within the infrastructure group, the security group, the compliance group, all the rest of these, that the other teams don't always know see the implications to the end user. They make a change. There's logic behind their changes. They are making it better day by day. The performance has gotten better in many areas. There's many things that are better, but how do we keep up with it?
Yeah.
And so I'm in there chesting this out, trying to figure it out. And I finally got to the point, after burning a lot more hours than I want to even pretend like I did. I finally ended up having to just reach out to Microsoft's product management, which are kind enough to answer questions for me occasionally when I pop up with stuff. And they were like, oh, you're right. We can't actually see those recaps, and we can't retrieve them in Purview yet.
Oh, nice. Which
is a problem.
Yeah.
But in the process of running all those test searches, I kept seeing all these other summaries showing up going, what is that? And what is this? All these artifacts that I did not realize that Copilot was strewing around. I mean, I assumed that Copilot, any query I put into my Microsoft Copilot was going to be showing up in the discovery. I haven't tried to set a retention period on it. I haven't tried to figure out. It's just my test environment.
Yeah.
I just assumed that was no big deal. It was going to be there, but I didn't assume that when I did a search for that Copilot, that Microsoft, they call it a condition, type equals Copilot activity. I didn't assume when I pulled that back that I would suddenly see all these summaries from every Word document that I'd touched. And that I would see versions of those Word documents strewn around that result set. I think I was trying to find one. I had a good meeting with an old client friend who was making some career choices and things, and I asked him if he was kind enough to let me record it so I could test Copilot. And that was the other Friday, and he said, great. And I I was like, oh, I might have 5 or 6 objects coming out of that because I created chats, I created loop files, I created a whiteboard, I created notes, I did an agenda, I did all the things you do, and I deliberately spiked them with words I knew I could find. And then I come back and I was like, okay, let me see how much is there. And now suddenly I'm looking at like 60 different objects
Wow.
out of one meeting. And
Wow.
my thought then goes to our customers. It's like, well, in the old days, I had a meeting. It might have a meeting invite and it might have an attachment. If somebody wrote a couple notes, we added notes after a while. We added all these other things, but they weren't that big a deal. Now I'm seeing all these user generated and Copilot generated artifacts that are showing up downstream. And what are we going to do about them? And how much is it going to cost us when we suddenly have to start shoving them all into
What I have to do?
relativity,
Yeah.
reveal, or
Yeah.
your discovery platform of choice?
Yeah.
And have we kept up with them well enough to be able to filter and identify what they are? And are they really, even though they're associated with a user, are they user generated?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
Well,
I
thanks.
just
I think I just want to quit now.
I do have confidence that these things I believe part of what's going on is that Microsoft, frankly, is just their development is outreaching the control development.
Ah,
And it's pretty classic in high speed, high cycle work in that I feel like they're creating new functionality, new features, new capabilities, which themselves are creating new objects um, quicker than the controls around them, the features, the turn ons, the turn offs, the only keep this for a day, whatever you do, um, can be developed, and it's much faster than the information can be delivered to the end customer. I mean,
so where are we? What do you think we're going to see from what they've told us and what you've discovered in the next 2 months? I mean,
oh,
am I correct? The name Purview is going away. It's called something else now. It's going to be called something else.
I don't know.
Oh,
I will confess that my active research cycle over the last 6 months since I've taken cases again has really tapered off. I am focusing and trying to follow the roadmap and trying to make sure I'm keeping abreast of that. But even my old testing cycle where I was testing about every quarter now has dropped quite a bit. So I'm not exactly sure what they're doing on the Microsoft is infamous for rebranding everything at least once a year to 2 years. I mean, the fact that we still call it Word is pretty astounding. Now, what I can tell you is that if I'm looking if I'm reading the tea leaves of the development roadmap, I believe this is not going to anymore. I used to attend all the big Microsoft conferences and all the rest of stuff, and I've been out of that circuit for a while. So this is me purely speculating on reading the actual development releases and features. I believe that Microsoft, in one sense, is trying to head for the Copilot interface combined with the Loop pages to be a universal document collaboration generative one. I'm not quite sure how I see Teams rolling it, whether Teams will be the architecture for that or Teams will be feeding into it. But the more I look at this, the more I'm seeing that the development focus is on embedding Copilot into everything and to pushing everything to the new storage architecture, which moves away from Mailbox, OneDrive,
right.
and it moves to a centralized storage that is behind the Azure wall, where everything now can be collaborative and interacted with. We don't have to have file locks, and we haven't had some of that stuff for a long time, but architecturally what they're trying to do is to move to the point where you never send a document. You always send a link. And they're forcing that down the pipe. And all of this developmental shift and direction has impact to us on the discovery side because we need to be able to explain where our people work, what they generate, and how do we
Right.
retrieve it. And it's getting further and further behind the magic curtain
And do
in
you
that.
think that's going to impact what we now know as the purview and the litigation hold um, work process, the workflow that we know? Or is it, like you said, more stuff behind the curtain?
Theoretically, if they do it right, and sometimes they don't do it right, but they catch up. Um, they might do it right the first time, but they'll get yelled at by a bunch of client customers, and they'll come back and do it again. Theoretically, purview in the UI should stay as the accessing area. If not, they are slowly making some of that more accessible through their APIs for the partners too.
Ah,
So we're seeing partners that are now on the new graph APIs that they're using, trying to get directly to things. Um, for instance, that Microsoft meeting recap that I said Purview can't get yet, I can get to it with the API though. So I can reach it with the API. It just hasn't been exposed yet to Purview.
and do you anticipate that there are partners who will put their own front end on it then because of that?
I do, but I'm hoping that the model will continue to be a better together model where the a partner may put an interface on it, but it is continued to be stored, the history of the holds, the queries, the exports, any review that's theoretically done back through any preview, anything that's my hope is that they're smart enough to not allow the partners to free reign in
Cannibalize it.
there
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
leaving the breadcrumbs in Purview. Although Purview is a thin layer. It doesn't store a lot of
Yeah.
it's not like when we look at classical e-discovery platforms, back in the old days going forward, we kept records of everything down to the item level. Every search was what we call a transactional search. I say I want to find every Tom O'Connor email. It hands me back, if there's 10,000 emails, it hands me back 10,000 records. Purview stores the query criteria and it stores some information about what happened. But if you wait for 3 or 4 days and you come back and you click on it again, it has to re-execute the query
Ah, okay.
because it's storing the criteria, and
Right.
until it moves it into a review set, then it doesn't have it. And the moving into a review set, of course, takes time and all the rest of it. So you asked about kind of where I see us
It's like being
going.
a Catholic. It's really kind of in purgatory. It hasn't really moved
Yeah,
on.
until you add it to a review set. And up to this point in the past, we haven't been charged for that storage. I
Yeah.
don't know how long that's going to last. So we'll see. But in the next, you said kind of the next 2 to 3 months, next quarter. The biggest news I foresee right now that I want to warn just like everybody about, it's not warning. We've known this for quite a time. They've told us for a while. The old UI for Purview eDiscovery is going to be fully retired. They're making it really hard for you to get to it now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I've noticed.
it's going to go away. Now,
Has that,
theoretically, all of your matters and everything else were migrated, and they're essentially replicated into the new UI. But that UI is changing underneath of us as we go. I thought when I did a lot of writing about it back at the end of at the beginning of the year, end of last year, I thought that it was a fairly well baked UI. They're still making changes. They rolled out a new data sources tab very recently, which is great because I just spent several weeks going through supporting a client where I had to step in and there was 32 different custodians, and every time they asked for a new search, I had to go in there and click 32 mailboxes and OneDrives.
that's the sort of reporting about what's going on that has been scaring me is it doesn't seem like it's been baked yet. They're still they're still mixing and matching stuff. So
It
okay.
it
Well,
seems to be evolving underneath of us, and
yeah.
it's if you tell me that my old one's going to go away, but the new one's evolving, and my question is for corporate litigation support, folks that I like to support, the people that I work with,
Yeah.
how are they able to, what are they able to do when they walk in, sit down on a Monday morning and something has changed?
And it's going to change every week for the next 8 weeks.
And when you're
Yeah.
talking, well, it's not every day. It's we don't want to. I don't want to blow things out of
Okay.
proportion.
It'll change 4 or 5 times in the next,
Right.
but
And
still,
it's always difficult. Remember that Microsoft doesn't deliver things all at once to everybody. It
yeah.
rolls it out in waves.
Yeah.
So when I've
That's
got clients,
problematic, like you said, to a big corporate user,
oh
to
yeah,
corporate litigation. That's a major headache. It's not even a headache. That's like full body paralysis.
it's just it just stresses everybody else because you got come in on a Monday morning, you look at it, something has changed. If you've got a structured larger litigation department where you've got actual folks working on it, like then in that case, you've got people who pop in, look at it, and have to go up the ladder, and they have to say, "Now, what do we do? Give us a decision. Have we looked at it? Have we changed it? Have we tested it? Can we rely on it?"
Can we
Now that
rely
you,
on it?
and it does, yeah, because you make a change to it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the changes are bad and that they're going to go away, or
Yeah.
or they're going to break things. Sometimes it happens, but not often.
But I have to learn it. And then if they're going to change it again in 2 or 3 weeks,
Yep.
yeah, like you said, stress.
I
Now,
actually had a case where I had to come back to counsel and tell them I'm very sorry, but I can pull everything by these conditions and these conditions, but they've changed things on I ran a test result and I can't be sure that I understand the syntax fully for how they've changed some of the Boolean connectors or
yeah,
the actual search condition creation. And you're asking me to do this by tomorrow. So my answer is where I think you only have about a couple thousand items, we're going to have to pull about 500,000 items and put it into a discovery platform in order for us to actually work it in a way that that we can sign up for later.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now, you said something earlier, which also, I mean, this is all great. This is all tense enough. This leads to enough stress as it is. But then you add our our friends at Teams. Like, where does, yeah, I've talked to a couple of different people at large firms. I work more in the law firm market than the corporate market, but they all say uniformly Teams is the thing that makes their life the most miserable. And I said, well, the good news is I'm not sure that's going to get real, solidified as any better for another 6 months. I said it will.
I
I think it
yeah, I
will.
used to know. I mean, Tom, you have to remember, you have to go back a little bit in time. We to go back and look at 2020. Teams was launched. GoToMeeting was launched. All the rest of these were launched. We had various collaborative video conferencing meeting tools, and all of a sudden everybody had to work from home.
Right.
And the architecture went from an adoption of 5 or 10 or 15% to an adoption just through the roof. And I remember I'd done kind of a data map assessment for a client, and I remember being in like 19, it would be 2019. I was in there asking them about their team's adoption and got a rough idea of the counts and the things like this, is how many team sites they had, and what I was trying to figure out, how much eDiscovery impact this would have for the legal department, so they would know how much energy to focus on their when they do their scoping and their assessments and the rest of stuff. And the adoption was tiny. And then I went back in 2021 and I asked, and they're like, "Oh, well, yeah, well, we might have had this before, but now we're up to 40,000, 50,000 team sites, and we've got, basically everybody who is a knowledge worker in the company is now in Teams every single day, multiple times a day,
Yeah.
and these team sites may have multiple channels on them. So it's a bit of a nightmare, but the adoption curve went very, very quickly, and you know they they tried to expose a lot of the pieces back into Purview for the legal controls. They tried to make sure that we could put things under hold. It's been a constant effort, but the reality is you have to use it. Like, I will tell you right now, those law firm clients of yours who are sitting here yelling about the fact they don't like Teams is because they have a corporate client who was forcing them to actually connect to a corporate legal department team site for
Right.
that matter
Right.
in order to communicate. And they're like, I don't like it. I'm there. I just want to send my email. Okay. I have a case right now that I tried in the very beginning to say we need to do all of our communications through, but it was moving too fast. The first rule of litigation support is to do no harm and to not get in the way of the case. And I could tell very quickly I was not going to be able to kind of push through, hey, we all need to be in this team, in this corporate team site, and we need to be doing all communications there. I am 6 months later, and I am very much looking forward to the metrics that I'm going to pull for the actual email counts, because I was on a conference call with the group, and I had one of the poor attorneys, or as a vendor, popped up and was like, I really want to say we've had this one email string going for a long time here, and I realized that my Outlook was crashing. And so I want to apologize for that I had to terminate that email string, and I've started a fresh one because it was overloaded. And then across the call, there was this ripple of, oh, that's what's going on with my Outlook. Oh, that's why every time I click on that, everything is shutting down. And I'm laughing hysterically because I sat there in the beginning and said, don't do this. Outlook is not designed for this. We have a collaborative daily process in which we are sending literally hundreds of emails around this matter. And you're stuffing it all into multiple copies.
It's like the old tubes in the buildings to put the mail in, the letters in.
Yes.
Stick it in a little pneumatic tube, right? We're trying to do that with Outlook now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, they can hate on Teams as much as they want, but the reality is whatever your collaborative platform of pick your poison. That is where we should be for these type of communications, for discovery in specific topics, specific matters. That is where we should be doing our communication. It should all be there.
Yeah. And are any of the changes in Purview going to impact any of this? Shouldn't, right?
Well, Purview's kind of up the back end of the pipe. So the changes happen upstream.
Yeah.
And the changes upstream are, in my opinion, generally driven by usability, adoption. If you look at the architectural source of all the data flowing downstream, what they're looking for is how can we do this better, faster, and get people to use this more, which they're not thinking about of how do we put the controls on it for what we do at the back end.
Right.
Right. Purview is beyond Purview as a unified platform goes beyond eDiscovery because you have all the compliance stuff in there, the records retention, everything else. And they all use the same hooks to talk to the data sources and pull data in. So it's more that there's going to be impact for the content flowing in to Purview and the content you're pushing through it than there is that, Purview is going to make changes upstream.
I like that analogy that everything's coming downstream from Teams.
The only thing that goes upstream are holds.
Yeah.
and even the holds at this point, it's a struggle because you got to know where things are. One of the biggest areas that I've seen they've added a lot of features and functions around this. I give credit to the Purview PM team specifically for recognizing that people needed to be able to see the Microsoft groups, because there's only two entities as an entity that exists within Microsoft. You've got an individual user, and then you got a group. And every team site, every SharePoint site, all are based on a group. So if you don't know which groups are relevant to the scope of your hold or your matter, then you're not seeing any chats, email files that have been stored around that, even if the users have generated them.
So it's not enough to just know what channel you're on.
Channel is that subpart. So I got a group channel. I can have multiple channels that exist below it.
Right.
You can know the channel and you can find the group by the channel with a little effort. My point is more of the larger data map challenge of that. I like classic case. I get somebody who walks in the door and says, we've got a problem, and we think that that the engineering dropped the ball because there was an accident. Now we've got to look upstream and
Right.
figure out who made what decision on this building.
Right. Right.
This bridge we were trying to construct.
Yep.
Classic construction, classic post-accident construction litigation cycle. You've done, I know, quite a number of them, especially offshore stuff like me, since we're both based on the Gulf. And in the past, you would go to the people and you would pull, and you might go to the department file share and work your way down through the file share. Now it's scattered in amongst the teams. The people are participants in teams, but finding out what teams and what team channels a user's participating in is a challenge. I can go to the users, I can ask, but we're putting out a hold. We haven't interviewed people yet. We haven't gone to them yet. We've
Right.
done initial assessment and they've said, here's our primary group of 4 engineers, a safety guy, and we've got somebody else who was an on-site supervisor. We know those are our core people. Let's get them for now, and then we'll open it up the scope as we go.
Is there no channel? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm reverting back to my old days of Novell directories, and
Oh, yeah.
and a
There is
master
no
list.
there,
Nothing like
there's
that.
no visualization of your SharePoint Teams group that I have been able to find that is a true visualization that says top structure, working our way down through business units, through things like this.
Right.
We created all those structures on servers and file shares in the old days.
Right.
I even go back all the way to Banyan Vines, so that's if you're going to talk about old school stuff. But fundamentally, they haven't visualized that way. There are some good reporting tools that are in the admin console, but most legal departments don't have access to that. And they're more about reporting on volume and traffic,
Right.
so
Right.
that IT can manage the speeds and feeds and say, hey, why are we suddenly getting 4 terabytes sitting over here that's costing us money? Oh, somebody's been uploading their movie collection again. By the way, I see that a lot. I'm not kidding.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
They don't mean to. I get execs who travel, and when they travel, they download copies of movies because they know they're going to be offline for extended periods of time, either on
Right.
flights or in foreign countries where their serials are not allowing them to connect to for their streaming services. So they'll download it all, but they'll drop it unintendedly underneath of the OneDrive directory, and then it gets mirrored back up to the network.
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah, it's fun. It goes back to that old rule, the old early day rule in the Enron days when I had a 5001 rule. For every 5,000 email we pulled, one person got fired
Nice.
because they were hiding it there. Excuse the ancient cat in the background. They do that occasionally when they get 18, 19 years old.
Okay.
But
Well, listen,
Microsoft is.
I don't want to hold you up a whole lot longer. I'm taking away from your valuable
Yep.
client.
I got to get back to the billable, but let me just wrap up on like I would consider the big thing for most people.
Yeah. Well, what's your words of wisdom here? What should we do, Obi-Wan Kenobi?
It's not just me who's specializing in Microsoft. There are other people who are regularly writing about it and trying to do a job. Some of that stuff is behind a paywall. Some of it's not.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, there's a couple things. Good friend of mine who actually has worked in Microsoft told me, set up a monthly save search or a monthly check that of data, and rerun the system. Do it a monthly status check. Is it there? That's a good one to kind of see. Have things moved? What's new? Have regular. The legal department does not need to be trying to keep up with Microsoft. It is too much. There's too much moving, and every tenant.
Piece of advice. That's a great.
And every tenant, the Microsoft tenant is not engineered differently. In every Microsoft tenant, there are different administrators and different controls that will impact and different users who will use workflows, create power automated flows, do crazy stuff. So your tenant is unique. So the biggest thing I try to say for most corporate is set up not a monthly, but usually a quarterly call session, sit down with the your IT leads who are in charge and get what has changed this quarter. What are you implementing? What's coming up? You got to do that reality check with them so they at least give you enough notice, and it gives you the chance to raise the little red flag that says, "Hey,
That
I
could be a
hear that you
problem.
want to do
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
but can we at least do a little testing around it? Can we make sure that we have controls? Can we make sure that we can put a hold on it? We can collect it. We can export it." Um, and so the real thing is awareness. Find the people out there who are writing about it and try to get on their lists. Um, it's
And to
hard.
that
It's hard
and
to
to
keep
that
up
end,
track of it.
will you be keeping up with this stuff on ED Journal? I
I would
know, like you said,
love
you get behind as you're working with real paying clients.
I would love to say that I am going to do the job that I have done for the last 4 to 5 years of constantly conducting regular research on focusing on Microsoft and a couple other platforms and publishing out those results all the time. I don't know if that's going to be sustainable in the long run for me. We'll see
Yeah.
where I end up.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying running cases again, but it makes the research time hard to do. Now,
Oh no, I know.
when I do find something, and especially if it's something that I think is important, I will carve out the time out of my billable and I will write about it. This morning, I spent an hour and a half and knocked out a blog specifically talking about the auto-generated summaries from Copilot just because I ran into it. And I thought that if I was out there, I'd want somebody else to tell me that Copilot is automatically summarizing my private, confidential, super secret investigation document
Yeah.
that I'm writing up for the board. And it's and a auto generated summary is now in existence that I don't know what it says yet unless I pull it up and I look at it.
Floating around there. So
Right.
so the real statement to make, I guess, is keep an eye on your blog as well, because as you find things, you're
I'm
gonna
gonna try. I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
do my best and continue to share because frankly, I'm dependent on the other folks in the industry
yeah.
to find and catch these things and highlight them as well. We are a community and we need to all be sharing this information. I wish that the legal technology industry was better about facilitating those discussions at places other than, oh, we're safe, we're at a good conference now, and now we can all talk, and then we come back, but we don't share it
Then it's just
online.
we put it on pause. Yeah,
What
yeah,
about, yeah, then what happens to the poor folks whose company doesn't give them an educational budget to go to conferences and to do
oh,
continuing education?
I had that discussion with several of my friends in the government about whether they were going to be at Ilticon. They said no. Now, with recent developments, our
Yep.
education budget is gone.
Right.
Unless I take a couple of days off and pay for it out of my own pocket. No, I won't see you there. And
Yep.
luckily, some of them are in D.C., so I'm going to take a little afternoon jaunt up to D.C. to see some of those folks when I'm there. But yeah, you're right. It's been difficult for years. It's, I think, even more difficult now. Speaking of which, are you going to be at Ilticon?
Oh no.
No, no.
My conference,
Oh
my
no,
2025 conference cycle is pretty much
you're done.
gone. Unless folks reach out to me and say I want you to speak, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then I may be able to throw a little bit of time into it. But with the cases and the matters at this point,
yeah,
I can't take a day or 2 to 3 days off
yeah. No,
without
I get it.
having.
I understand. So I'm
Oh yeah,
glad I got the chance to talk to you here. I'm going because I had the same sort of considerations. I didn't go to Legal Week this
right.
year. I've decided I'll go to.
We missed you.
Yeah, I know. I hated missing that. I hated missing that. So, but I had to, again. Yeah, you're going to make a decision. Where do you put your resources? And Ilticon was a bigger one. So I'll be there. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us, and I appreciate your sharing the knowledge, the wealth of information. Because as I said, there's just been a lot of turmoil at the user end as people are just not sure what's going on with a lot of different reports about Microsoft is changing this, Microsoft is doing that. Where it's hard to call that. So this
So
will
Michael,
be a great help to people.
I would say that, the Microsoft Purview team is a good team of product managers.
Yeah.
They
Oh
really
yeah.
do care, and they want to see the right thing done. The hard part is that this is the global knowledge, the global corporate knowledge management platform.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's no way and at the rate of that they're evolving it, things are going to get broken and new things are going to come in.
It's like I first learned to handle a boat on a navigable waterway in a canoe at Boy Scout camp. That doesn't help you if you're in charge of an aircraft carrier.
Right.
And they're in charge of air. I saw a great meme the other day in the recovery world that it was like, life is like a helicopter, but I don't know how to fly a helicopter.
Well,
So,
flying Purview is fun. It is changing and evolving. They did some good work, but that means everybody's workflows and everything else has to adapt to it. And they got to retest it to make sure that in
again,
their environment with their data, it's working right.
I can't thank you enough because this, I think, will help to calm some of the anxiety that's out there.
We try.
All
I
right.
mean, it's not like we have any other options to get to the data.
Yeah, there you go. Well, thanks again, Greg. I can't thank you enough.
You're welcome, and it's always a good chance to catch up. And hopefully, you and I continue to help the clients out there and manage all this stuff and keep it moving, because that's where I learn the most, honestly, is parachuting into an emergency.
Yeah.
And having to find things on the fly and be like, okay, this is what we have to do now, and let's make sure that we do the best we can and we can substantiate it back, so that I'm not sitting in front of a magistrate trying to defend a process that wasn't right.
Well,
So, yep.
All right. Thanks again, Greg. Really appreciate it.